everyone. This video is going to be my guide on how to get to gasoline production by selling wool in Townstar. This video is meant for beginners, so I will be explaining as much as I can with every move that I make and what I am looking for. I am playing in the current version of Townstar known as Townstar Live. A new version of Townstar will come out, which is called Townstar Godot. Although there will be some differences such as the placement of buildings or the UI or a different biome selection, they should still be similar enough to where you can follow along with what I am trying to accomplish here, as I explain what each building is for and what I am looking for when placing these buildings and crafting items. When you start playing Townstar, you start off with a limited amount of gasoline, in this case 40 gas. The gas is used every time you want to sell items for in-game cash. You usually use 1 gas per sale, but sometimes you may use more gas per sale if the city you're selling to is farther away. You can use that cash to buy buildings or produce higher quality goods, which sell for more cash. Selling these goods also give you stars, which is how you would score in the leaderboards, something that is essential during a competition. If you run out of gas and you aren't able to produce any, you won't be able to sell items anymore. And if you run out of cash as well, you will be stuck and have to start over. So getting the gas production is very important in the game. At first, it may seem difficult, but once you find out how to do it, it's very easy. My first goal is to show you how to get to manual gas production, which is slow, but it does make gas. Then I want to show you how to get to passive gas production, which crafts gas quicker, removes the need to craft certain items, and also saves space. Once you become more experienced, you will be able to get to passive gas production much quicker by making some risky moves at the start. I will be keeping it simple for this guide. So when you start playing Townstar and get into your town, in standard rules, you start out with 25,000 cash. You will be paying wages to your workers every minute. As you can see on the left of the screen, it says I am paying 50 cash in wages every minute and I've already lost some cash. So if I sit around and do nothing for too long, I will be losing money. One thing I need to mention before I begin is that the cost and sell value of things can change as rules change, especially during competitions. This is what people refer to as the meta. Oh, in the current version of Townstar that I am recording, windmills cost 2,500 to build instead of the normal 7,500, and sheep pens cost 10,000 to build instead of the normal 20,000. This temporary change was to make it easier for new players to get to gas production, but I assure you that it is not necessary. I will do my best to save extra cash on the side that I will not use every time I purchase these buildings, but you will just have to continue to sell items until you collect the cash you need to continue with the next step that I am doing here. Like the title of the video says, most of the time I will be selling wool for cash, but before I get to that, I want to sell some flour because that's the cheaper way to set up. So I'm going to be playing in a forest biome with nothing on the edges. So all these edges are considered an open world edge. So to start off with flour, I do need a windmill. A really good place to put a windmill is in a place with no shade, as no shade with the windmill will allow it to craft items much quicker. This specific spot right here, I know that it has no shade because the trade depot casts no shade. The fuel storage doesn't cast any shade. The builder house does cast 2 shade, but it won't reach that block. And the silo casts 3 shade, but it also won't reach that block. So I'm going to go into the shop at the bottom right, and the windmill will be in the farm tab all the way in the bottom of the shop as it's in alphabetical order. So I'm going to want to place a windmill there. If you're in Townstar Godot, you will have to drag the windmill there and click on it. And it'll also show you that there is no shade being casted on there. Or if there is shade, it'll show you how much shade. But preferably you want to put the windmill in an area with 0 shade. As you can tell with these icons right here, the black one with the cloud right here means shade, and there is 0 shade in that area. Whereas you can see right here, where the builder casts 2, the woodshed casts 1, and the silo casts 3, this block has 6 shade total. So once you place down your windmill, the builder that you start with comes out of the builder house and collects wood from the woodshed that you also start with. The windmill takes a total of 5 wood, so the builder has to go to the woodshed, collect the wood, and deposit it into the windmill in order to build it. So after it builds the windmill, then you will be able to actually use it. In the meantime, I will explain what these other buildings are for that you start with. So yes, the woodshed is where your wood will be deposited. Silo is where you can deposit various amounts of crops such as wheat. You do start off with 10 wheat. You also start off with a farmhouse. The farmhouse comes with the farmer, and the farmer takes care of the wheat fields, which you also start with 2 of them. So the wheat fields, once they are completely watered, it will start to grow wheat. The farmer will go pick up the wheat and take it to the silo. Now, if it gets to the point where the silo is full, then the farmer will just simply go to the nearest road and just drop the wheat, unfortunately. So the item just gets lost. Now, since we have 20 wheat, we could just sell 10 wheat, which is fine. It's going to give us a little bit of money. So right here, have our fuel storage, which shows us that we have 40 gasoline to use. We also have the trade depot, which is what we are going to use to sell items. So going into the trade depot, you would click sell. Make sure you have wheat clicked on there. And the trade depot is going to sell 10 items at a time. We can see we can sell to Atlanta, which is what the city is called. It's going to sell very fast because we are very close to a city. And it's only going to consume 1 gasoline. So we're going to go ahead and sell a batch of 10 wheat. Going to take away 10 wheat from the silo and 1 gasoline from the fuel storage. And it said on that screen that 10 wheat would give us 3,000 cash. Now, while all that was going on, the windmill did finish building. We're going to click craft on the windmill and going to craft flour. Flour is going to use 2 wheat, which we're already making, and 1 wood. So the miller will come out of the windmill, go to the silo, collect 2 wheat, and also go to the woodshed and collect 1 wood. After it has all those items, it will begin crafting flour. If your windmill has no shade on it, it'll craft flour at the fastest rate, which is 30 seconds. If it does have shade, then that'll take longer. Depending on how much shade it has, it may take 1 minute, it may take 2 minutes. With full shade, it will be what's considered red timer, which is the slowest time. The slowest they can craft the items, and that's going to be 4 minutes for windmills. So it would take much longer, which is, you do not want that. You want it to be a green timer, which green timer is the fastest craft time available. So we sold 10 wheat. We had to click on the trade depot to collect that money. And as you can see, we gained 3,000 cash. Now in the current version of Townstar or in Town Circuit, you may get these helpful hints. Right here it says make more money by selling more advanced goods. Build a windmill and start milling flour from wood and wheat, which is what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to put don't remind me. I don't want that message to pop up anymore. And you can see the miller is now milling the first batch of flour. Now flour does not actually go in the silo. Flour has to go in a proper storage. So the miller will take the flour to the storehouse, which you also start with. Storehouse also has a max capacity of 20. So we just got our first flour here. Now in order to sell the first set of flour, we need to collect 10 flour. We're not actually able to sell it yet. But we can see that once we do have 10 flour, it'll sell for a total of 20,000 cash, instead of selling 10 wheat for 3,000 cash. So getting to flour will be way more money. Now one thing we need to do right now is collect more wood. because the windmill is going to be taking up wood and we have almost no wood. We are going to need a way to collect wood. Now to do that, we will have to build a lumberjack house. Preferably, you want to build a lumberjack house in an area where it won't cast shade to your crops or to your windmill. So a lumberjack house casts 2 shade, and that's the same case for a farmhouse or a builder house. Those cast 2 shade. And you will learn all this as you play the game. You will learn how much each building casts in terms of shade or dirty or other proximity effects. So there are a couple of places where I could put a lumberjack. I could place it here, but then they would cast 1 shade, so that's not a good idea. Same thing with this area. This area, it won't cast any shade on the windmill if I place it here, but it will cast shade on the wheat, which means it'll take even longer for the wheat to grow, which is a bad idea. So in this case, I can put the lumberjack house here. It's not going to cast any shade on the wheat fields, and it's not going to cast any shade on this windmill. I'm going to go to the shop, in the farm tab, scroll to the middle right here for the lumberjack house. It's going to cost 2,500, and I will have to pay wages on this building. Same with the windmill, you also have to pay wages. Now we have a lumberjack. The lumberjack's going to go to the closest tree, chop it down, and deposit it in the woodshed. Now some of these trees in these areas are on red timer, so it's going to take a long time for those to grow back. But in the forest, there are so many trees, and most of those trees are green timer and they will grow quickly. So if you're playing in the forest, you have no issues with trees. There's just so many of them, so it's easy to collect wood. So while we wait for more flower production, allow me to explain these other 2 buildings that we start with. So you do start with a well. Now the farmer will collect water from the well and take it to any crops that still need water. In this case, the wheat field. You can see. You also start with multiple ponds in a forest, but no matter which biome you pick, you should start with at least 1 pond, and it should be near your wheat. So the pond will provide up to 2 passive water, and in most cases that's a good thing, especially for crops. So the wheat fields require 3 water. The pond will provide 2 water to this one and 1 water to this one. As you can see, it has more water than just 2 and 1 here. It's because in the forest you also have marshes. The marsh provides 1 passive water. So the marsh is providing 1 passive water to both of these. And that's how you're getting a total of 3 water here and 2 water here. Now only forests have marshes, so other biomes will not have marsh, and you'll likely have to provide more water to these crops. But in the case of the forest, you will have a wheat field that already has all the water it needs. And they craft wheat quickly because they're on green timer. They have no dirty or shade affecting them. So I am up to 3 flour right now. I'm going to explain the dirty proximity effect. Of all the buildings that you start with, the trade depot and the fuel storage, they don't cast shade, but they do cast something called dirty. The trade depot cast 2 dirty. So it's going to cast 2 dirty here and 1 dirty here. It goes down the farther the range goes. So it's always going to be 2, 1. Or in the case of the fuel storage, it casts 3 dirty. So it's 3, 2, 1. So thankfully, these buildings aren't able to cast dirty far enough to reach these crops. But if I were to put a crop here, you can see that there's 1 dirty here that's being casted by the fuel storage, because it goes 3, 2, 1. So if I were to put a crop here, it would be very negatively impacted. It would be red timer. That's because it has 1 dirty, but it also has 2 shade. Once it gets to 3 negative points, it's going to have a red timer, If it only has 1 or 2 negative points, it would be a yellow timer, but it would still be slower. It needs to have 0 or no negative points for it to be a green timer. And different things are affected in different ways. When it comes to these buildings, such as the lumberjack house, the farmer house, or the builder house, they cannot be negatively impacted by these proximity effects, so they're completely fine being next to dirty or shade. The windmill, however, like I explained earlier, it does not like shade, or else it'll slow it down the windmill, but it does not mind being next to the dirty proximity effect. So, at this time, we've been running 1 windmill and getting flour that way. With the amount of cash we start with, you can actually run 2 windmills. However, you want to build your second windmill in an area that's not going to cast any shade to this windmill, and it's not going to have any shade casted on itself. Now that is somewhat tricky to do because you only have roads in these areas. But what you can do is add another road, as roads aren't that expensive. They're only going to cost 1,000, so you should have enough money to be able to add another road and add another windmill. You just have to be very careful on where you want that windmill to go. Now, if you're in the forest, there's going to be a lot of trees all over the place, blocking you from almost every direction. You want to try to figure out a place where you will have no shade and you won't cast any shade to this windmill. So remember that the windmill casts 3 shade, and it's going to cast it like this: 3, 2, 1, or it could do 3, 2, 1. So if I were to build a windmill here, that windmill won't have any shade and it won't cast any shade to this. But I do have to be careful with the crops. So if I put a windmill here, it would cast shade as 3, 2, 1, or 3, 2, 1. So if I do build a windmill here, it's not going to cast any shade on this, which is a good thing. So I've decided that I can put a windmill here. It's not going to negatively impact anything. Now I am going to need a road before I can place a building like a windmill on it. I'm going to want to put a road right here. I'm going to go into the shop and go into the terrain tab and click dirt road. It's only going to cost 1,000 cash. Once it's finished, I click on it to finish building it. So now I can put a windmill here. The farm tab, scroll all the way down. And once again, it's going to cost 5 wood. The builder's going to have to come build that. But it's going to take a while. I do have plenty of wood because my lumberjack's still gathering wood. If I really wanted to, I could sell a batch 10 wood. I usually do not bother selling 10 wood, just because it doesn't sell for much. Neither does wheat, but you know. In this case, I'm very close to 10 flour, so... But I am going to sell another batch of 10 wheat, that's fine. I'm going to sell one more batch of 10 wheat while I'm still waiting on getting flour. But if you really wanted to, if you already knew what you were doing, you would probably want to build 2 windmills at the start. Make sure both windmills are on green timer. They're not being slowed down, and you'll be able to make flour much quicker that way. So at the moment, all we can really do is wait. So what I'm going to be doing, waiting for this to build. As soon as it builds, I'm going to start crafting flour on it. And as soon as it has 10 flour, as soon as I have 10 flour saved up in the storehouse, then I'll be selling my first batch of 10 flour. So I'm going to speed it up until then. So now we have 10 flour. Well, now we have 11 flour actually. But as soon as you get to 10 flour, you can sell your first batch of flour. And 10 flour, once again, is going to sell for 20,000. That's going to give us a good chunk of money. So I could go ahead and build a sheep pen, but technically, since it's cheaper for me in my current version with standard with the discount that they gave on sheep pens, it might not be fair. You might not be at the point where you have enough cash to actually afford to go to wool production right now. So what I'm going to do is expand this flour production just a little more by adding one more windmill, which is completely fine if you also want to be doing this. So once again, I'm going to add a third windmill, and I want it to be in an area with zero shade, and I also don't want it to cast shade on any of my windmills or crops. So there are two possibilities I've come up with. One possibility is right here. I could put a windmill here. I would need a road here. Or I could put a windmill right here. What I do like about this spot is that the windmill would be closer to the silo, because remember, the miller has to go to the silo 2 times. The miller also has to go to the woodshed once for wood. But another thing you may have realized is that the lumberjack will occasionally attempt to take wood to the windmill if it needs wood. That way the miller saves a trip from not needing to go to the woodshed. So when we think about it, if we want the miller in the windmill to craft flour quicker, we want it to be closer to the silo. So if I had to choose between this spot and this spot, I do think this spot would be better. So I'm going to want to put a third windmill here. I'm going to need a road. I'm going to build a dirt road there. And then I'll be able to put the windmill here. Once again, builder will do its job. Collect 5 wood, build the windmill. As soon as it's built, once again, I'll have it crafting flour. I should be able to provide enough wheat for all 3 windmills, but it may get to a point where I won't be able to produce wheat fast enough, especially considering that the farmer has to waste some time gathering water in order to water this wheat field. But I am going to let it run like this. For the most part, it should be able to handle up to 3 windmills, at least for some time. So I'm going to once again fast forward it up until I can get to the next batch of 10 flour. We have our third windmill built, so 3 windmills crafting flour, but we've already achieved our next batch of 10 flour, which is great. So we're going to sell that batch of 10 flour, get 20,000 more cash out of it, and you should definitely have enough cash to at least put down a sheep pen and a rancher house and some meadows to start crafting and selling wool with. So going on to wool production, we're going to need a rancher house because the rancher has to be able to collect the wool from the sheep pen. We are going to need to place down another building. We can't really place down any buildings in these spots or else it'll cast shade to the crops or to the windmills. So we're going to have to put a road down somewhere and make a building that way. I realized a good place to put a building would be right here, as the shade won't reach the crops, and nothing else over here is affected by shade. So I'm going to put a road right here. Now I'll be able to put the ranch house right here. The ranch house casts up to 2 shade, and you'll be able to find the ranch house in the ranch tab of the shop near the middle right here. Going to cost 1 wood in order to construct the ranch house, so the builder will have to collect the wood for that. At the same time, we have to decide where we want the sheep pen. Now, sheep pen is in a similar situation as crops. Wheat fields, for example, need 3 water in order to start crafting wheat. So preferably you want to have them near ponds or marshes, just up until the point they can get to 3 passive water. Because if you've noticed, the farmer collects wheat from this crop field right here much faster than it does from this one. This one takes time. So once your ranch house is built, go ahead and finish building it. But as for the sheep pen, the sheep need 5 water in order to produce a wool. So it's a lot of water. You're gonna have to find a way in order to provide it with 5 passive water. If you're playing in the forest, there's plenty of ponds and plenty of areas that provide at least 5 passive water, such as this area right here, 6 passive water. Now, another thing you want to keep in mind is, preferably, if possible, you want it to be close to the storehouse and to the ranch house. Wool will get stored in the storehouse, but also your rancher will have to walk to the sheep pen to collect the wool and of course bring it to the storehouse. So what I like to do in this setup right here is find the closest area where I can get 5 passive water. So there are different ways we can get 5 passive water from the setup. Now the way I'm going to choose to do it is by getting rid of this marsh right here. Getting rid of a marsh is going to cost some money. In this case, it's going to cost me 5,000. You don't have to do this. There are different ways to do this, but this is the route that I'm going to show. I'm going to get rid of the marsh, 5,000. I'm going to be able to place a sheep pen right here. Sheep pen's going to be in ranch tab, right here next to the ranch house. It's going to cost me 10,000. In standard rules, it costs 20,000. So the sheep pen is going to require 3 wood to be constructed. So once again, the builder will go and do its job. The sheep pen will also need a way to eat. It's going to need feed. In order to craft wool, it also needs a total of 8 feed. So there are 2 different ways to produce feed. One is the old school way, as we call it, of crafting feed mills and then the trough, and having the ranchers collect wheat from the silo, bring it to a feed mill, and craft feed that way. That way is not recommended anymore. The best way to do it is to go to the shop, go to terrain, and purchase these meadows. You can place a meadow right next to where your sheep pen's going to be. So that meadow will produce feed every 45 seconds. So it's going to produce feed much quicker and less expensive than the other routes. Now, you may have noticed that there are 2 pastures in the map. These are similar to meadows, however, they take a significantly long time in order to grow back, so they're not reliable. So you will need a couple of meadows. Now, if I'm doing my math correctly, I believe I should still have money to spend even with the discounted cost of the windmills and the sheep pens. So you should still have money to put down more meadows. I would suggest having at least 4 meadows for your first sheep pen. And of course you want them nearby, because the movement speed of the sheep, which is, you know, how fast they move around, it's not that fast. The same can be said for the builder. The builder has one of the slowest movement speeds of the game, so it does take a long time for some of these units to go to where they need to go. So as the builder is almost done finishing building the sheep pen, you already want to have your 4 meadows down. You already want to have your ranch house. Now I built the sheep pen right here because it has 6 passive water. 2 from this pond, 2 from this pond, 1 from this pond, and 1 from the marsh right here. So you can see it has all the passive water it needs. It just needs the feed and the wool. So each sheep pen comes with 2 sheep. So they're gonna go to a nearby meadow or pasture and collect feed. They're gonna get grow their wool, I suppose you could say, and then go back to their sheep pen and deposit the feed. They're gonna do this until they reach 8 feet. They also need wood. So there are 2 different ways this can happen. The rancher can go to the nearby woodshed, collect the wood and deposit it into the sheep pen, or the lumberjack could chop down a tree, collect wood, and if it's nearby, it's going to deposit it to the sheep pen itself. So similar situation to what's going on with the windmills. So this already has all the water passive. It has 1 wood. So we're just waiting on the 8 feet, which it's almost there. I am going to rotate my building so it's looking towards the meadows. That way, in a moment, the sheep will be able to exit and enter the sheep pen a little quicker. Now, while I have been explaining that, we already have 10 flour to go for our next batch. So I'm going to explain something called auto sell. Auto sell is a very important mechanic in this game, and it's something you want to use if you still want to continue playing the game and selling items while you're not actively on here. So you're gonna want to go to your settings, which is at the top left. You can click the settings or click your profile picture. Going to open up the settings. Right here you see auto sell. You're going to want to customize it first, see what's on here. If you have any items from anything else, which you probably don't if you're brand new, but in this case I've played on this town before. If you have any other items here, you want to go ahead and remove them. You most likely have wheat on yours, so you want to go ahead and remove that. You don't want to be auto selling wheat. Once you remove everything, you want to click on the item you want to auto sell. I understand in Town Star Godot, this UI will look a little different. Your items will most likely be on the left. But go ahead and click on the item you want to auto sell. You're going to have right here the keep amount. So what's the keep amount? Keep amount is the amount you want to keep before you start selling the items. Well, so to explain it better, if the keep amount is 0, as soon as I hit 10 flour, it's going to auto sell all 10 because I'm left with 0. That's the keep amount. If I set the keep amount to 5, it's not going to sell the flour until I hit 15 flour, which I also need to turn auto sell on. So once you set the keep amount, you go back to your settings and turn auto sell on. So I set the keep amount to 15. Although I already had at least 15 flour, so it went ahead and sold 10 flour for me. I'm going to go back to the settings because I suggest you put the keep amount to 0. As soon as you get 10 flour, you just want to go ahead and sell it in this case, because you're not using the flour for anything else. That's what you're selling right now. So while I've been explaining that, I did craft my first wool here. So the rancher did pick it up and put it in the storehouse. But now that I have flour on auto sell with a keep amount of 0, as soon as it hits 10 flour, if the trade depot is not busy, it's going to sell a batch of 10 flour. And as soon as it gets back, it's going to automatically pick up the money. So I also want to go into my settings once again, auto sell, and put wool on auto sell with a keep amount of 0. That way both flour and wool will be auto selling. It's very important that you put keep amount of 0 right now because you are using the same storehouse. If you don't do keep amount 0, you may fill up the storehouse. This is what people call jamming your storage. Your storage gets jammed, you won't be able to fit any more items in there, and your workers would just be dropping the items, and you'll be, losing your valuable items that you could have sold or used for other crafts. So in a moment here, you'll see once I hit 10 flour, it's just going to automatically complete the set. Now at this point, you should have enough money to put down another sheep pen, which I'm going to be doing. You just want to make sure, once again, it has 5 passive water, or else you're going to be wasting a lot of time. So there are different ways I could put a sheep pen down and still have 5 passive water here. So right here, 5 passive water, as you can see. Just clicking around, checking these areas. This is all, so 5 passive water. This area is 5 passive water. And this area is 5 passive water. So there's plenty of spots I could do right here, which I like the way those spots work. So I am going to do those spots starting with this one because it's closer to the storehouse and the ranch house. So this is going to be my next spot where I put down a sheep pen. And the builder is going to work on building that. You can see I'm about to hit 10 flour. I'm not going to do anything because it's going to auto sell it. As you saw, auto selling 10 flour. Now my trade times are very low because I'm close to a city. So it's just going to come back real quickly and it's going to automatically claim that money. Right there. So I have even more money now. I want to focus on getting this one done first. And I also want to add 4 more meadows. 4 meadows is a pretty safe bet for each sheep pen. You could do 3 meadows, but yeah, 4 meadows will be a bit quicker. So I got to the point where I'm not producing wheat fast enough to actually craft flour with all 3 windmills, but it's still crafting flour, and I'm still going to continue to let it craft flour for money. For the time being, at least. But I do have enough money to actually afford a 3rd sheep pen. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be putting the 3rd sheep pen in this spot right here. And I'm trying to do the math. Will I have enough money? I absolutely have enough money. Yes, I believe I would still have enough money if this was standard rules. So I'm going to go ahead and build the sheep pen right here. I know it has 5 passive water. I'm not going to get rid of any of this, at least not for the time being. So once the builder is done with this one, it's going to work on this one. And I am going to want a way to provide 3 or 4 meadows to it. I don't want to put a meadow here because I'm going to have a sheep pen there as well later. So I will put a meadow here. Yes, it's also 5 passive water, but I'm not going to have a sheep pen all the way over there. So right here, a meadow is okay. So slowly getting that wool up. Now the reason I do want to sell wool is because it sells for more than flour. 10 flour sells for 20,000. 10 wool sells for 37,500, almost double. But it's way more profitable. So now we got to the point where we're selling flour, and we're also going to be selling wool eventually once we start ramping up production here. So we do have to start worrying about collecting some other resources in order to get to gasoline production. We're going to need a way to collect water drums and energy. So one of the things I like to focus early on is collecting energy. Before we can start collecting water drums, we're also going to need a way to collect oak wood, which a lot of new players have trouble collecting oak wood, especially in a forest, because oak wood is just like, it comes from oak trees. Now you already got your regular trees, so most of the time your lumberjacks are going to be going for your regular trees. You're going to have to trick them into going for your oak trees. So I'm going to attempt to explain the best way to do that. Here we go, I got my second sheep pen done. And what should I focus on first? Well, I'll do the oak wood demonstration. So the oak trees will require 5 passive water in order to grow, which is the same case as a tree farm. So all these trees are actually just normal trees. They don't actually require any water. And if you want to remove them, they cost a lot of cash, 20,000 cash in order to remove them in this case. But you could also put down tree farms, but they would require 5 water. But we're not going to put down tree farms. We have plenty of trees. What we want to do is put down oak tree farms, because we're going to need oak wood in order to craft the buildings that will get us water drums. So find a spot that has 5 passive water for your oak trees. This spot could work. I could also use this spot right here. Actually, yes, I like the way this spot looks like right here. I'll go with that spot. And then put down an oak tree farm here. No shade here, and it has enough water, so it's just gonna immediately start growing. Now, oak trees do take much longer to grow than compared to regular tree farms, or probably even these trees. So right there, eventually it's gonna grow. Now, in order to get a lumberjack to actually pick it up, you're actually gonna need either more lumberjacks or wood storage closer to this area. Wood storage, it's actually called wood shed. But so to do that, we're probably going to want a road here in order to put a wood shed closer and in order to have more lumberjacks. So I'm going to put a road right here. I'm going to explain why I want it there. Well, I want a wood shed nearby, so I'm going to put a wood shed right here. The wood shed will cast 1 shade. It's going to cast shade in these spots, but it's not going to cast shade here. It's not going to reach that far. So wood shed's going to be in farm. Scroll all the way down. Wood shed right there. And there we go. I'm going to cast 1 shade here. It's not going to cast any shade here. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I probably spent a little more cash than I should have, but if you don't have enough cash, of course, just wait until you get your next batch of flour in, wait for that money to come in, and then continue building. I'm going to go ahead and continue with this though. So you got your wood shed nearby. You're going to want at least 1 more lumberjack, but if you want to speed up the process, you're probably going to want 2 lumberjacks. So in this case, I am going to go ahead and do 2 lumberjacks. I'm going to build 1 here and 1 here. So these lumberjacks will be casting shade on these trees, so they will grow slower, but don't worry, you have so many trees in the forest that it doesn't matter. These cast 2 shade, but the shade won't reach this tree right here. So as you can see, it's ready. We just have to wait until we can get a lumberjack to pick it up, which should be easier now that we have the wood shed nearby and we have additional lumberjacks. So I definitely spent more money than I was supposed to if this was standard rules, but not to worry. You'll get money eventually. So the 3rd sheep pen is pretty much done. So we'll be getting wool production much quicker now. Gonna keep our rancher busy. And we're halfway to 10 wool. That's going to give us a lot of money, and we're almost to 10 flour, so that's great. So at this point, I am going to wait a little while up until I get to 10 wool so I can sell that first batch of wool. In the meantime, you're going to want to monitor your wood storages. Now that we have 2 lumberjacks, we're going to be collecting wood quicker, which is good because the sheep pens also need wood. We got 3 sheep pens and 3 windmills, so we'll be using more wood. But you want to make sure that your wood sheds don't completely fill up. If they do, what you most likely want to do is flush one to get rid of the items, because you also want to make sure that you're collecting oak wood. Try to collect a good amount of oak wood, say 5 or 6. You can see the lumberjack just collected oak wood because it was nearby. It's going to take it to the woodshed that's nearby. So as you can see, this strategy works. Try to collect a couple oak wood. Really, for manual gasoline production, you probably only need 1, maybe 2. But for full passive gasoline production, you would need 6 oak wood. So best bet is to collect 6 oak wood, but I'm just going to leave it running and see how much oak wood I can collect. I will be fast forwarding this part up until I can get to 10 wool, and then I'll proceed with the energy production. Okay, so I just recently sold a batch of 10 wool. I'm getting close to selling a batch of 10 flour. And so far, only 1 oak wood, unfortunately, which is probably all I need for manual gasoline production. But I'm going to once again flush this storage and try to see if I can get them to get another oak wood and maybe put it over here. Regardless, we're slowly going to try to get oak wood that way. But we also need to work on getting energy production, and that's going to be a bit pricey because we're going to need to build a wind turbine, a warehouse, and then an industrial worker to pick up the energy and put in the warehouse. So first thing, the wind turbine. The wind turbine is similar to the windmill, as it casts 2 shade, but it also doesn't like being near any shade. You're gonna want to make sure you put it somewhere where there's no shade, and you also don't want it to put it near crops because it's gonna cast shade on them. So I'm gonna have to find a spot for that, somewhere where we haven't really built anything yet. So there's 2 shade right there. I suppose there's no shade over here. It is pretty secluded, but it will work. So I'm gonna put a wind turbine. Yeah, I'll just put a wind turbine here, no problem. So I'm gonna need a road for that wind turbine. And wind turbine is gonna be in the industrial tab, and you'll scroll all the way down. It's also going to take 1 wood, so the builder will work on that. I'm going to need an industrial worker to pick it up. And the industrial worker also casts 2 shade, so it can't be right next to the wind turbine, but you do want it to be pretty close. I'm going to be putting a road right here. That way I can put the industrial worker right there. Industrial worker will be in the industrial tab. All the way at the bottom, it'll show up as worker house. So on the other side of that road right there, going to build a warehouse. So go to the industrial tab, scroll almost all the way down, you'll see warehouse right here. So the worker house will use 1 wood and the warehouse will use 3 wood in order to be built. But usually you do want to build the wind turbine first. The wind turbine is going to craft your energy, and if you have it on green timer, which means it's not affected by any shade. It's going to craft energy every 1 minute. Now, if you have shade on it, even all the way up to red timer will take 8 minutes. It would take a significantly long time for you to get energy. So you really want to make sure it's on green timer. Now, good thing we have the woodshed nearby because the builder will be able to quickly build these 2 buildings. And hopefully we free up some space so that lumberjack can get us some more oak wood. So now that we have our worker house, as soon as the wind turbine is ready, it's going to start collecting energy. Now, one thing that you probably should wait, that I didn't do right here, is wait until the warehouse is finished. If the warehouse is not finished, it's going to collect energy. It's not going to have anywhere to put it, so it's just going to drop it. And that might happen here, unfortunately, but we'll see how it plays out right now. I can also see that the lumberjack picked up oak wood, and it's trying to find a place to put it. There wasn't any space, so unfortunately it just dropped it. So maybe on the next one. Same thing with the worker house. It picked up energy, but there was no place to put it at, so it dropped it. Not what I wanted to happen. This is an important lesson. If you don't have any space, or you don't have the correct storage, you're just going to be picking up items and dropping them. So that's something you want to be careful with. So warehouse is almost done. So the next time the worker comes and picks up energy, it's going to have a place to put it at. And you're just going to be able to stock up energy this way. So energy will go to the warehouse. One other thing that will go to the warehouse are water drums. Now, the water drums can be gotten, really it's one way, but there's another way to get passive water drums. So since we're trying to go for manual gasoline production, right now we're just going to try to get the water facility. The water facility is going to be able to craft water drums. So assuming that you have enough money to build it, I'm going to go ahead and get the water facility built. So you want the water facility in an area with 3 passive water, since crafting water drums requires 3 passive water. The good thing about the water facility is that it casts no shade, and it's not negatively affected by anything at the moment. So really you're able to place it anywhere so long as you have a road, and of course 3 passive water preferably. So right here, that's 2 passive water, not quite enough. This place has plenty of passive water. Now, could I do better? I do see one scenario right here that could work out. So the oak tree farm right here has 6 passive water. The marsh is giving it 1 extra water, so I could get rid of a marsh. That way it would still have 5 passive water. And that way I could put a water facility right here. Of course, I already have enough water here, so I actually don't even need to get rid of the marsh. I could just put the water facility here. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. I could also have put the water facility here, but I do want it close to the warehouse. And of course, I just realized right here, more than enough water, and it's close to the warehouse. So yes, I just built the water facility right there. Water facility, it's going to be in the industrial tab of the store. You're going to scroll down right here next to the warehouse. 10,000 cash, 2 wood, 1 oak wood. So you just need 1 oak wood for your water facility. As long as you're able to collect 1 oak wood, you can get started on this step. If you were going for passive gasoline production right away, you would need to store 6 oak wood, which you'll understand why later, but you're going to need a total of 6 oak wood in order to build 2 water pumps in order to get passive water drums. But that's going to be explained later. For the moment, I'm going to be building the water facility here. All this time, still collecting flowers, still collecting wool, building up our cash. should have enough cash to be able to expand our wool production one further, which I'll be doing right after I finish building this. Now, just so you know, energy and water drums, once we start crafting them, they don't sell for much, so I don't recommend you sell them. As soon as your warehouse gets filled up, if it gets to that point, you could just temporarily turn off your wind turbine or your water facility. But once you start crafting gasoline, you'll realize that this method of crafting gasoline isn't very efficient. You're going to need a lot of wind turbines or water facilities. It's going to take a long time. And yeah, that's just the way to manually craft gas. It's not very efficient, but it is a way to do it, especially if you're having issues getting to gasoline production and just need a way to get there early on. But once you understand how to get to manual gasoline production, you'll probably get more experience with the game and understand how to immediately get to passive gasoline production much sooner. So I'm just waiting on Builder to collect oak wood and put it here. Almost done with that. Almost have a batch of 10 wool and power, so that's going to give us a lot of money. Okay, water facility is built, so I'm going to start crafting water drums with that. Takes 30 seconds, requires 3 water. Well, it already has 3 water, so it's just going to start crafting them. And it's going to deposit them in the warehouse. So we have energy, we have water drums, so that's good. What are we missing? We need a refinery in order to start crafting petroleum and then start crafting gasoline, but we are missing something else. We are missing crude oil. In order to craft petroleum, you would actually need crude oil as well. And in order to get crude oil, you would need to build oil pumps. I believe that's what they're called. Allow me to double check right here. Yes, oil pumps. They're pretty cheap. They cost only 3 wood to build. But the thing of oil pumps, it takes quite a while to make crude oil, so you'll need a couple of them. And also the oil pumps will cast dirty. Dirty is going to negatively affect your crops and also your livestock, as well as some other buildings, but in this case just crops and livestock. So we are going to need to find a way to place some oil pumps in some areas. Now, I'm gonna continue to try to gather oak wood here, so I'm going to flush all my wood. I already know that I'm going to get more wood back, so I'm not worried about that. And I'm going to find a way to get crude oil pumps, but I'll do that a little later. What I want to do right now is expand my wool production. I want to put a sheep pen here and just add up a couple more meadows near the area. So sheep pen here, sheep pen here, and we might not be able to fit 4 meadows per sheep pen in these areas, but we are going to try to at least place down a couple more meadows nearby. So it's about 3 meadows per sheep pen, so that's still going to help out. And as that's getting built, we're gonna try to find a way to get some crude oil over time. And crude oil is negatively going to impact these trees, but we have plenty of wood in this. We can get plenty of wood from these trees because we have plenty of trees. So where am I going to get? Where should I place these oil pumps? And I do want to start off with at least 2 oil pumps preferably. The crude oil gets picked up by the worker house, so that's another thing to keep in mind. And there's a lot of trees taking up space as well, which is unfortunate. But I'm gonna try to do this without destroying too many items. So, okay, I'm going to destroy this marsh. It's going to cost 5,000. I'll be able to put a dirt road here, and that's going to allow me to put 2 crude oil pumps nearby. Preferably, I also want a fuel storage nearby, otherwise they're just going to have to go all the way over here to deposit it. But for the time being, I'm going to just... Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and build a fuel storage. Just trying to make up my mind here. I am going to build a fuel storage right there. Fuel storage does cast 3 dirty, but the dirty won't reach my oak tree farm. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Just going to cast fuel storage there. You are eventually going to move stuff around. At the moment, it's just trying to figure out where you can place buildings without spending too much money deleting things and trying to get to gasoline production. So right here, gonna wait for the sheep pens to build, gonna wait for these oil pumps to build, and also wait for this fuel storage to build. That way the worker house will start collecting crude oil, putting it into the fuel storage, and I'll be collecting crude oil that way. So I'm going to leave it running for quite some time, as I'll be doing other things in a moment. But in the meantime, it's going to auto sell flour, it's going to auto sell wool, it's going to finish building these, produce more wool, start producing some crude oil, putting it here. I'm going to temporarily pause my wind turbine by stopping it, and same thing with the water facility, since my warehouse will get full pretty soon anyways. And I'm going to craft crude oil, but as soon as I see that I have way too much crude oil, I'll also stop that. So I'm just going to leave it running, collecting cash, and I'll be quickly fast forwarding through the next part. So feel free to skip if you don't feel like watching all that time pass by. Okay, so now I'm back after some good amount of time. I sold a couple batches of flour, a couple batches of wool, so I got a good amount of cash. I crafted some crude oil, which I have right here. So I'm going to continue with the plan to get to manual gas production. Now I have plenty of money to make some moves now. So I'm going to need two refineries, one to make petroleum, the other one to make gasoline. The way I'm going to place them is in predetermined spots. I kind of planned this out for the past couple of minutes. Where I want the refineries to be for manual gasoline production, so it'll be easier to transition to full passive gasoline production a little later. So one thing you should know for refineries, or about refineries, refineries cast up to 4 shade and up to 4 dirty at the same time. So you do not want refineries near any of your crops or livestock or buildings such as windmills or wind turbines, because it'll almost completely slow them down, put them to red timer. So you really want to be careful about that. So the spots that I want my refineries, it's going to be this spot right here and this spot right here. So I'm going to get rid of this pond. Getting rid of a pond doesn't actually cost you money, it gives you money, which is a important strategy to keep in mind if you're trying to get to gasoline production even quicker in a forest. So I'm going to get rid of this pond since I don't want that pond there. And I'm going to go to the shop, go to the industrial tab, and scroll to the middle until I see the refinery. So the refinery costs 15,000. It's going to take 10 wood, so it's going to take some time to build. Now, during that time I was gone, I did build the sheep pens and the oil pumps and the fuel storage. That did take my builder quite a while to finish, but what you can always do is make more builders. So the more builders you have, the quicker the building process will go. So what I'm going to do is purchase 2 more builders. Now, the cool thing about builders is they don't need a road, so you don't need to have a road nearby to place them. So I can place one here, I can put one here, and I can also put one here. I just have to keep in mind that each one casts 2 shade, but if I put them in these spots, they won't cast any shade for my windmill or for my crops. Now that I have 4 builders, they should all be working on getting wood and taking it here to finish building this. So that's good. I do want 2 refineries. You can manually make gasoline with 1 refinery. Although it's not recommended, it takes even longer because you have to keep switching from petroleum to gasoline. It's very inconvenient, so I would suggest you do go for 2 refineries when you're trying to do gasoline production. The other refinery, I do want it to be right here. So I could get rid of the tree and put the road here. I'm not going to do that, at least not for the time being. I'm just gonna go ahead and put a road here. But yes, eventually I will be getting rid of some of these trees and marshes because they're in the way. But once you have enough cash, you can afford to get rid of all that. But like I said, I'm trying to do this without getting rid of that many debris that's in the way. So I have the road there, and I can put another refinery right here. So another thing to keep in mind when you're manually making gasoline, so petroleum would need water drum, energy, and crude oil. You want the warehouse to be nearby because they have the energy in the water drums. And you also want the fuel storage with the crude oil to be nearby. This isn't very close. This is just, you know, as close as I could get it to without figuring out too many trees. Pretty much the same thing for your refinery making gasoline. You want it to be close to the warehouse. It also needs energy and water drums, but that one's going to need petroleum. But the petroleum also gets stored in the fuel storage, so it's about the same scenario. So these 2 refineries, I'm going to have this one right here crafting the gasoline, and the farther one crafting the petroleum. The one crafting gasoline has to make more trips because it needs more energy and more water drums. I also want it here for a specific reason that I'll explain later on. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting for these to build, I'm also going to turn on the wind turbine and the water facility once more. Just until I can get to 10 of each. 10 energy, 10 water drums. That seems like a pretty safe bet. And I suppose I'll turn them off, and then as soon as I get the refineries back on, I'll turn them back on. I might not need to turn them back off actually. So we'll see in a moment, as this refinery is almost done building. As for oakwood, I did manage to collect a total of 6 oakwood, as you can see on the left right here, with the total items. 6 oakwood, I will need that later, as 6 oakwood will be necessary once I want to transition to full passive gasoline production. But now that I have 6 oakwood, I don't want to make any more oakwood, so I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the oak tree farm, since I know I won't need it anymore. So the first refinery got built, and in this refinery, preferably you want to start crafting your petroleum first. So I'm going to go ahead and have this one craft petroleum. As soon as it crafts 1 petroleum, I'm going to switch it over to gasoline and keep this one at gasoline so I can keep this one at petroleum. But as you can see, you will be able to make gasoline with just the 1 refinery. It's just an annoying process of having to switch between crafts. So petroleum will need 2 crude oil, 1 water drum, and 2 energy. It's going to take 2 trips to the fuel storage and a total of 3 trips to the warehouse. None of this is passive, so it means it's going to manually have to go and collect all the items from these storages. So it'll take some time. And once it crafts the petroleum, which takes 30 seconds, it's going to deposit it to the fuel storage. Now the refinery is not negatively impacted by anything, so you don't have to worry about it being slowed down by something else. Really, you just need to worry about the refinery slowing down other things. That's usually the case when you're building the refinery. So as for water drums, I'm gonna go ahead and stop the water facility. It is gonna take out 1 water drum, but I'm just going to continue to let it craft energy, because I will actually need more energy than I will water drums. I'll definitely need more energy, which you will see later on. So I should consider actually building out another wind turbine, which, to be honest, I'm gonna go ahead and do. I realize I could put another wind turbine here. It's gonna cast 2 shades, so it won't reach this one, and this one won't interfere with this one. So I'm just gonna need to put down a road. And while they're working on the refinery, after they're done with that, they can then work on this wind turbine over here. So 2 wind turbines will get me more energy. Now all this time I've been selling flour and wool. I still have 15 gas, I still have plenty of gas, plenty of money. Most of my money is coming from wool. So what I am going to do is transition out of flour. Now, depending on your scenario, you might not need to do this. It really depends. But for the sake of this guide, I'm mostly trying to sell wool. I have plenty of money. I will still need more money. So I'm going to just focus on selling wool for the time being. And I'll even try to expand my wool production further. It seems like I could already go ahead and make another ranch house so I can collect the wool even faster. So as soon as I get to 10 flour, I will be removing the windmills, the wheat fields, and the farmer house. And in fact, even the silo. I'll be removing all that so I can just focus on the buildings that I need for wool production. But I want to wait until I have 10 flour, that way I don't feel like I'm leaving flour on this table, leaving it to waste, basically. So right here, second refinery is done. They're about to go and finish up that wind turbine. So it is working on another petroleum. I'm just going to go ahead and stop it. So you saw it had 1 crude oil already here. When I click stop, I'm not going to get that crude oil back. It just gets deleted. So you want to keep that in mind when you are stopping the crafting of in any of your buildings, basically. If you already have items, you stop it, you're not getting those items back. Very important to keep in mind. But I did want to go ahead and stop it so I can focus on gasoline. So now I need 1 petroleum, 2 water drums, and 6 energy. That's a trip to the fuel storage to pick up the petroleum I just crafted, and a total of 8 trips to the warehouse. So yeah, it needs a lot of energy, as you can see. 2 water drums and a total of 6 energy. So I do have this refinery ready. This one's going to craft the petroleum. It's going to pick up the crude oil, water drum, and 2 energy. Now I am probably going to run out of energy. So good thing I built another wind turbine. Even so, I most likely will run out of energy. So at this point, I officially made it to manual gasoline production. I got to the point where I can now craft gasoline. It's very slow, not efficient, but I can craft it. So even if I ran out of money, I should be able to get gasoline to continue to sell goods to make more money. So long as I'm selling something like wool to make enough money to keep up with the wages. So, manual gasoline production. I still have 15 gasoline left over, so I'm doing good. But once you play Town Star enough, you'll realize that this isn't the best way to do it. Manual gasoline production is fine, but there's something called passive gasoline production, where it's going to be significantly faster, but it will be more expensive. And it saves you space, which is very important in the end, where you need to use that space for other buildings. So now that we got to manual gasoline production, I am going to focus more on getting to full passive gasoline production. And the good thing is I still have a good amount of cash to continue with that. And I'm still going to continue to sell wool in the process. I'm going to keep this running so I can make a few gasoline. But the problem with crafting gasoline is it actually hinders your ability to get to full passive gasoline production because you need energy in the process. You're going to need energy to get to full passive gasoline production, but you're using the energy manually crafting gasoline. So you either need to pause your refineries making gasoline so you don't waste that much energy, or you need a lot more wind turbines, which is the route that we're going to attempt to go moving on to full passive gasoline production. It is slightly more difficult, but it is possible. So what do I need for full passive gasoline production? I need a way to provide the energy passively without having to craft energy. The way that can be achieved is by building a power plant. A power plant is very expensive at 250,000 right here, and lumber, 10 wood, 10 energy. It also requires a paved road. So we do have the cash in this case, but we don't have a paved road, and we also don't have lumber. Right now we haven't made that, so we're gonna have to figure out how to make lumber before we can even get a power plant, because having a paved road also requires lumber. So the next step is to get to lumber production. Now, in order to get a lumber production, you do need a lumber mill. So I have to figure out where I want a lumber mill, and I'm actually going to have the lumber mill right here in this spot. So I'm gonna have to get rid of the tree, which costs 20,000. Go to the shop, go to the industrial, and right here, lumber mill, 50,000. It is an expensive building. I believe the most expensive building we've built so far in this guide. So that's gonna take up 5 wood. So while that builds, I'm gonna look over here, and I'm right about to get to 10 flour, which is all I want before I get rid of this full flour production. So I am going to stop 2 of my windmills so I can just have one of them focus on the last flour, which it looks like this windmill over here is the one that's going to be crafting the last flour that I need for the next sale of flour. So I can go ahead and delete these two women. I'm just completely getting rid of the flower production and just focusing on wool production. Yes, technically I'll be making money slower now that I'm not selling flour, but it allows me to conserve my gas, which is something you really want to keep in mind if you're trying to get to full gasoline production as soon as possible with the 40 gas that you start out with. It's also something you want to keep in mind if you have an area where you're not that close to a city and you're spending 2 gasoline per cell. If I was spending 2 gasoline per cell, I would have already ran out of gas at this point. So yes, it is possible to get to gas production by spending 2 gasoline per cell, even spending 3 or 4 gasoline per cell, but very difficult. If you're spending 3 or 4, you probably have to get to manual gasoline production before you get to full gasoline production. But if you're spending 1 or 2, you could just straight up get to full passive gasoline production and not have to worry about this manual gasoline production setup right here. After getting your energy and your water drum scenario, well, not the water drum scenario, but after you get your energy scenario done with the wind turbines, the warehouse, and the worker house, you can build a lumber mill. So the lumber mill will allow you to craft lumber. Lumber requires 5 wood, 2 energy, and 1 water drum. Okay, I suppose you do, yes, you do need a way to get water drums. So I'm going to be crafting lumber now. Gonna either go to the woodshed and pick up 5 wood, or the lumberjacks will just deposit the wood into the lumber mill, similar to other buildings such as the windmill, which I'm gonna go ahead and delete this windmill and go ahead and delete these wheat fields, delete the farmhouse, and delete the silo. And I'm also going to build 1 more ranch house to assist with picking up the wool. Now that that's done, back to the lumber mill, 5 wood. After that, I'm gonna go to the warehouse, pick up 2 energy and a water drum. So yes, each lumber is 2 energy, very important to keep in mind. You need 1 lumber to pave a road, which we're gonna have to do for a power plant. But then you're gonna need 10 lumber to actually build the power plant, and 10 lumber is another 20 energy. So yes, it's gonna take up a lot of energy, so we're gonna need to find a way to get more of that. So we got 2 ranch houses now. Should help out with our wool collection rate. And now we need to find a way to get energy production up. If I do run out of water drums, I can just turn on the water facility and craft more. But for now, we're gonna need more wind turbines. We might actually even need another worker house. That's how much energy we'll need. So, just have to figure out an area where it has 0 shade and it's not too far away from the warehouse. So right here is a good spot. 0 shade. I can put my road here. And I'll be able to build a wind turbine in this spot. It's gonna have a green timer once it's built, and it's not gonna interfere with these over here. So another spot I could put a wind turbine right here, where I had the oak tree farm earlier, because I know it's a 0 shade, and it's not gonna interfere with anything else, and nothing is going to interfere with it. So I'll put a wind turbine here. It's gonna be our 4th one. Now, could we have a 5th one? Yeah, we could, right here, 0 shade. So another road and another wind turbine. And I'm sure with all these wind turbines, I will need at least 1 other worker. Now the worker's busy with all the wind turbines and also the oil pumps. So where can I put another worker? Well, it's kind of a mess right here. So I can put a worker right here, and it's not gonna interfere with the wind turbine because the worker has 2 shade. So yeah, it won't actually reach it. I can put a dirt road here. And I can have a second worker house here. I have a couple turbines and worker house being built. Refineries are working on petroleum and gasoline. You probably, if you noticed earlier, I did craft my first gasoline, which I pretty much already used it with this recent batch that I sold for wool. Go. So, just gonna wait for that to build, and hopefully that increases my energy production. Now, for lumber, I do want to pay attention to both the lumber mill and the wood storages. If my wood storages are full, I will lose the lumber, since the lumber goes directly to these wood sheds, or the lumber yard if you manage to build that. So I also want to go ahead and make another wood shed so I have more space for wood. Or either that, or I could flush my wood sheds to make sure I have space in them. Because what ended up happening right here... Oh, okay. I thought I lost the lumber at first. But what happened is it crafted a lumber and it put it in this wood shed right here. Thankfully, I still had one space. So it did make it, otherwise I would have lost it. I have all this built, and I do have another wood shed here. I didn't want to flush these two because I have oak wood in there, and I don't want to lose that oak wood. So I went ahead and just made another wood shed. Now there is another storage called the lumber yard. The lumber yard works just like the wood shed, except it stores 20 wood instead of 10 wood. It can still store all types. It can still store regular wood, oak wood, and lumber, but it just stores twice the amount. It is way more expensive at 20,000, and it also costs 5 wood to actually build. So no matter what, you need to have a wood shed first in order to store the wood in. But I don't recommend building that until you find a very specific spot that you know you're gonna leave the wood storage there for a long time, or if not permanently. So it's going to continue to work on that. I am going to go ahead and turn my water facility back on, since I'm going to need water drums for everything. And like I said, if you wanted to speed up this process, turn off your refineries and just let the lumber mill focus on its job. And really, here's my recommendation on that. If you have at least one gasoline, you should not be crafting gasoline manually. You should be focusing on getting to passive gasoline production. The only reason you would want to get to manual gasoline production is if you're already right about to run out of gasoline and you know you're absolutely gonna need to craft some more gasoline in order to keep going, in order to keep building up your town. But if you're at this point, you can craft gasoline. But you already have 14 gasoline, you do not need to be crafting gasoline. So I'm trying to do this while crafting gasoline, which is a bad idea. But as you can see, it still crafts lumber. It's just a very, very slow process, so it's not worth doing. So I'm going to let this keep running for a little while longer while I save up the lumber that I need. But I will most likely shut off these refineries since I won't need them, since I really don't need more gasoline, at least not right now. But all this is so we can get lumber to work on the paved road to get a power plant. Now the paved road, I can go ahead and do that, but I need to make sure I know exactly where I'm going to put my power plants. And one thing I haven't mentioned about the power plants, not only do you need a paved road, you also need a water pump. Now, a water pump is important. We're actually going to need to build a water pump anyways. The water pump, which you can also find in the industrial tab right here, will provide one passive water drum to everything next to it. It has to be right next to it, but it's going to give it one passive water drum. Costs 30,000 to build, which is pretty pricey, but nothing out of the it's not too expensive, but it is pricey. It costs 3 wood, but it also costs 3 oak. The reason we need 6 oak wood is because we need 2 of these, because we need 2 passive water drum for the refinery crafting gasoline. So hopefully you noticed that. So we're going to need to build 2 water pumps, and the thing with the water pump, it has to be right next to a pond or a waterway. The waterways means could mean an ocean, could mean a river. In this case, we don't have an ocean or a river, so we're gonna have to use a pond. So I have 2 ponds right here. I'm going to be using this pond for the water pump, so I can get rid of this pond. I need to get rid of this pond. I also want to get rid of this marsh. It's in the way. So I'm going to be focusing on this pond. I'm going to have a water pump here and a water pump here. I'm going to go ahead and build those. Industrial tab, scroll down, and water pump. Now right here, I also want to build a water pump. In case you haven't noticed, there is a setting called quick buy right here. So it's going to allow me to place the last object that I just purchased. Now the quick buy won't work if you try to build it somewhere where it doesn't meet the requirements. As you can see, I don't have the option. But so long as I do it near a pond or somewhere where the requirements are met, and it'll let me do the quick buy. So I can do it right here. 2 water pumps. The builders are going to work on getting the wood and the oak wood to build these 2. Now, okay, yeah, I still have some storage. They're still collecting lumber, so that's good. So, working on those 2 water pumps. So once I have those 2 water pumps, here's what's gonna happen. I'm gonna have 2 water drums here. So that's not gonna need to pick up water drums anymore. And I'm gonna have 1 water drum here from this water pump. So that's also not gonna need to pick up water drums. And over here, the lumber mill, it needs 1 water drum, but it's also gonna be getting the water drum from this water pump. So this specific scenario will make it so that I will no longer need to be crafting water drums. So I can go ahead and turn this off because it doesn't have the 3 water anymore, so it would have to go to the well to even have 3 water. But also, pretty soon I'm not going to need any more water drums, which is great. That's going to give me passive water drums. That's part of the process for full passive gasoline. So I'm going to keep waiting on that. Even with 4 builders, it may take a while, but you can always feel free to add more builders to speed up the building process. Just remember, the more builders you have, the higher your wages per minute gets. So you don't want to go crazy and put 20 builders, especially since you're going to have to get rid of them later on anyways. So this water pump's almost done. That's going to eliminate the water drum need for this building and also fulfill half of it for this building. You can see 1 water drum. This already had picked up a water drum, so now it has 1 passive. It's still going to need to pick 1 more until I finish building this one. But of course, it's still going to need a lot of energy. So that's why we got so many wind turbines running. I'm already up to 4 lumber, which is good. Power plant will need 10, but I also need a paved road, so that's another 1 lumber. So really it's a total of 11 lumber right there. But this right here seems to be working. I seem to be able to craft gasoline and lumber at the same time, so that's good. Even if it is slower than it should be. So I'm going to let this run for a moment. I'll just fast forward it. Okay, so water pump is done. Now we have full passive water drums for the gasoline and the 1 passive water drum necessary for petroleum. And of course the lumber mill already has its passive water drum filled. So we're still crafting lumber, we have 5, that's very good. So now I can start thinking about the power plants. And first I want to get rid of this water facility. I don't need to craft water drums anymore. So the power plants, they have to be next to a paved road and a water pump. And I actually want the power plants right here and right here. Now the reason I want that is this refinery needs 6 energy and a power plant will give 3 passive energy to everything next to it. So if I have a power plant here, it's going to give this 3 energy. And then if I have one here, well, that's going to get 3 energy as well. So the power plant here will also fulfill the 2 energy requirement for this. It gives it 3, but it only needs 2. And the power plant right here will fulfill the 2 energy requirement for this as well. So as you can see, if I had 2 power plants, I would be able to do full passive energy for this set. Now the power plants would need a paved road, which is why I want one here and one here. So I will have to move this oil pump, which is no problem. But I want to go ahead and start with this. I want to work on the power plant that's closest to the lumber mill, because when I work on the second power plant, I'm going to need more lumber. So it'd be more beneficial to me to make the power plant close to the lumber mill. I'm going to start on my first paved road. They are pretty expensive. You can find them in the terrain tab in the shop. And they need to be next to a dirt road, or you can make a dirt road, click on it, and just click upgrade. It's going to cost roughly the same. You're still going to need 1 lumber and 3 wood. So yeah, once you're building the paved road, just wait for your 1 lumber and 3 wood. And once again, you can't make paved roads until you've already made lumber. So after that gets done, I'll be able to make my power plant here. I'm going to go ahead and remove that marsh since I don't need it. And yeah, as soon as this gets done, I'll be able to build the power plant. Shouldn't take too long, but I'm going to go ahead and fast forward this part. So, paved road is done. And now I can go ahead and go to the shop, industrial, and build a power plant right there. The power plant's going to cost 250,000, which at this point I can afford 1 power plant. And it's going to cost 10 lumber. I have 6 so far, which is good, but I'm going to continue to make lumber until I can afford to finish off the power plant. 10 wood, yes, I also have the wood ready. As for the 10 energy, that's going to be pretty difficult. You see, I'm using energy on the lumber, and I'm also using energy on the refineries. So at this point, once you get to the point where you're crafting your first power plant, I would suggest just turning off your refineries, because you don't want all your energy being wasted on them while you're trying to get this very important step of getting at least 3 passive energy from the power plant. Really, once you have 1 power plant down, it's going to help you so much with your energy production. Well, not necessarily with the energy production in this case, but it's going to reduce the amount of energy you need for your gasoline production, so it would help you there. It would also help you with your lumber production, since you won't need any more energy or water drums for it. So your lumber will be full passive with the exception of the wood, of course, since you'll still need to have lumberjacks to collect your wood. There's no way to get around that part. So this will take a while, but I'm gonna have energy keep going to the lumber mill up until I get to 10 lumber. If I notice that I'm not having any energy issues, I'll keep the lumber mill going. But if I notice that I need more energy, I'm just not making enough, which I should be making enough, but if I'm not making enough, I'll turn off the lumber mill as soon as I have all the lumber needed for the power plant. But I should be okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward it until the power plant is finished building. Okay, so power plant number 1 has been built. So now that this power plant's on, lumber mill has full passive energy. And this refinery right here has 3 passive energy. So I can go ahead and turn these back on. As you can see, 3 energy, and this refinery has, well, it has 1 energy, just because I don't have the power plant right here. Power plant's right here, so it's providing 3 to 1. So it's better than nothing. But once I have this power plant ready, this one and this one won't need any more energy. One thing that you do want to do is the power plant crafts energy, crafts it fast at 10 seconds. It requires a water drum, which you should have because it's next to a water pump. That's a requirement. But it takes 2 crude oil. Now, it's gonna go pick up crude oil, but the thing is, you really probably want your crude oil just for your petroleum. So what I would suggest is you turn this off. Unless you have a bunch of crude oil, then I suppose you could let it keep running. But in most cases, you're eventually going to want to turn this off because you don't want to be wasting your crude oil to craft energy this way when you could just craft energy with the wind turbines without using up crude oil. There are some scenarios where you could leave it on, and that's if you have passive crude oil. If you're playing in a desert biome, you'll have an oil seep. That oil seep will give up to 4 passive crude oil, which is extremely useful for your refinery that crafts petroleum. But it also enables you to run these power plants, crafting energy very quickly and not having to build any oil pumps at all, which is amazing. But in this guide, we're not using a desert, we're just using a forest. So I would suggest that you turn your power plants off for that reason. I'm gonna keep it on for the time being because I have so much crude oil. But that's just my recommendation right there. So one thing I want to do is I want to build the fuel storage closer. I actually want to build it right here. I like the idea of having the fuel storage directly across the refinery. That way the refineries can drop off and pick up the petroleum and gasoline much quicker. Same thing with the crude oil. So I got rid of that oil pump and I put down a fuel storage here. I am also going to go ahead and get rid of this oil pump. So right now I have no oil pumps. If you need more crude oil, just build your oil pumps somewhere else or keep them for a little while longer. I need to get rid of this one because I'm going to need another paved road so I can eventually build a power plant here. So I can afford to build the paved road. I can also afford to get rid of this marsh. I won't be able to afford the power plant just yet. I'm going to need another 250,000 cash, so it is going to take a while. So I'm going to have to sell more wool. Now all this time that you're working on this, you could have also increased your wool production, which I'm going to go ahead and do after this is built. I'm sure they're working on this. As soon as I need more crude oil, I'm going to find a way to build the oil pumps back. Preferably, I want them right next to the fuel storage, but there are 2 trees in the way. I most likely will just get rid of those trees and put 2 crude oil pumps that way. But I still have cash, so I'm gonna find a way to put down another sheep pen. So all these sheep pens are still good. They have full passive water. None of the dirty is reaching them. So like the power plant casts 3 dirty. They also have cast 3 passive energy, so you can see this marsh has 2 dirty. One of it is from the refinery, but 1 passive energy from the power plant. So you can see passive energy here. And the refineries, as I mentioned earlier, cast 4 dirty. So you want to be careful with that whenever you're trying to decide where else you want to put a sheep in. So there's not that much water here. Not much water here either. There's dirty there, so I have to be careful with that spot. Now I could get rid of this pond and put a sheep in here. That would work. I could also put a well, no. There's a dirty because of the fuel storage there and there. So no, you want to be careful, you want to pay attention to dirty if you're planning on building sheep pens. So see, that spot won't have dirty, but if I get rid of that pond, then I won't have enough water for these. But really, for the moment, I could get rid of that marsh, and I'll have enough water from the ponds to build a sheep pen there. Or I can build ponds myself, and that way I'll be able to put sheep pens here. So I'm going to take that approach. So this is how that's going to work. I am going to build a pond here. Eventually I'm going to have 3 ponds next to each other, and that's going to allow me to have a couple sheep pens here with full passive water. This setup really isn't that organized. Right now we're just focusing on getting money to get full passive gasoline production. Eventually you'll find out a way to make a more organized setup that's more appealing to the eye and probably works better. But the setup we have right here works just fine. So ponds cost 10,000. So not something you should be building very early into the game unless you know what you're doing. Ponds will also take 10 water. So the good thing is we start with a well, we never got rid of it. The well will fill up about every 30 seconds. A builder will come, take the water, and take it to the pond, and eventually the pond will have 10 water. It'll be finished building, and we'll get another pond that way. When it comes to the well, I don't believe I mentioned this earlier, but if you were to build another well, which can be done in the farm tab, and you scroll all the way down, you'll see the well right here. It's pretty cheap and it's only 1 wood. You want to make sure it's not next to any of the dirty proximity effect. If it does have dirty proximity, if it does have passive dirty, then it's going to negatively impact it and slow it down. This is also the case with the wind pump. The wind pump is very similar to the well. It's more expensive, but it crafts water at a faster rate, twice as fast than compared to the well. But it also does not like dirty. The problem with the wind pump is that it also casts 1 shade, so you want to be mindful of where you put that. I can see I'm crafting plenty of energy, which is good. Yeah, that's to be expected when you're running 5 wind turbines. So energy is not an issue anymore, but we still want to work on getting the second power plant, so we won't need all these wind turbines anymore. And I noticed that I am blowing through my fuel storage. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my power plant. I have plenty of energy from the wind turbine, so I don't need the power plant wasting my crude oil on that anymore. I am going to get rid of both of these trees. It is going to take up a good chunk of money, but I do want a place to put down 2 oil pumps again. And my gasoline is actually starting to go up. I'm still selling wool, but gasoline is actually going up instead of down. I have plenty of fuel storages. Eventually I will be getting rid of this one, and I'll probably also be getting rid of this one. Yes, I might lose out on some gasoline, but eventually I just want to stick with 1 single fuel storage. I got the pond building, and I got both of these building. So what about these sheep pens? Well, the sheep pens are going to go here after I'm done with this whole pond setup. So I'm going to let this run for a bit and fast forward until I can get that pond built and both of these built. Okay, we just got this pond built, and I'm going to remove that marsh and build another pond there. But I do want 3 ponds side by side. As for the lumber mill, I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. I already have 10 lumber for the power plant once I have enough money to build it. The reason I want to turn off the lumber mill is I still need wood for the oil pump, so I'm going to go ahead and let them get the wood, and let that finish building. So I'll fast forward this part as well until everything else here gets built. Okay, so this pond is done and the oil pumps are done. I'm already collecting crude oil with them slowly but surely. Still gonna need more money for the second power plant. So I'm going to focus on getting more sheep pens. So if you don't have enough money, just continue to sell wool until you can afford to build more sheep pens. But I believe I should be good and be able to build at the very least 2. I probably could build more. I'm gonna start off with 2 right now. So I'm gonna make a sheep pen right here and right here. All these spots have at least 5 passive water. So right here, 6 spots easily to that minimum 5 passive water. So that's good. I'm gonna get rid of this road for now. And I'm gonna want to place some meadows. Just so you know, the meadows are not negatively impacted by shade or dirty. So even though this spot has 1 dirty, it's still gonna be a green timer. Nothing negatively impacts the meadows for the time being. So I'll be able to fit in 4 meadows on this one. And the sheep pen will also have a good couple of meadows. Now the only problem with having sheep pens far away from each other, as you can see, it's basically going to be 2 groups now. Occasionally the sheep will go for a meadow that's like on the other side of the map basically, which is not very efficient, but you know, it's still going to get us a slightly higher wool production than we had before because we have more sheep pens actually focusing on producing wool. But yeah, if you wanted to make a very efficient setup with wool production, you would preferably want your sheep pens as close together as possible, like in a straight line. So like if I really wanted to, I could have 6 sheep pens, 3 right here, 3 right here. That would probably be more efficient. I could just have meadows all around. But for the time being, these 2 sheep pens will help out. I probably could put another 2. And yeah, technically I would have the money for it. So, but for the sake of this guide, I'm just gonna let it run at 7 sheep pens. That's fine right there. And with these 7 sheep pens, I'm going to let this run for a good while until I can collect all the money that I need to afford a power plant. So I'm gonna leave it. I'm just gonna leave it running. I'm gonna fast forward it. Gonna be using up all the crude oil that I make since it's much easier to craft gasoline now. But I'm still probably gonna end up with more gasoline than what I'm using, which is completely fine. I'm going to continue letting all these wind turbines run, although I actually do not need that much energy anymore. And as for lumber, at the moment I'm not going to craft any more lumber. I'm still good on that. So yeah, I'm going to just let this run and fast forward it, and then I'll be back when I have enough money to finish full passive gasoline production, and that'll be that. Okay, so I'm back. Once you have at least the 250,000 cash, which I have more than enough right now, but once you have at least 250,000, then you can go ahead and put down your final power plant, which I'm going to do right here. Go to the industrial tab, go for the power plants. So I have plenty of energy, plenty of wood, plenty of lumber. I have everything. I'm just going to let my builders finish building this power plant, and then I'll finally make it to full passive gasoline production. Making more than enough gasoline if I really wanted to. I could put down another road, could put down another oil pump. I would like to have a road here instead of this spot right here. Not exactly necessary, but since I have the extra cash, I am going to go ahead and do that. I'll put a regular road here. The only paved roads that you need are the ones next to the power plants. All the other roads could be dirt roads until... And well, you probably won't want to upgrade them to paved roads unless you know for sure that you're gonna want that road there. But once this power plant is built, you've made it. You made it to full passive gasoline production. So congratulations. One of the big steps towards starting off in Townstar, and once you have that, you can pretty much continue to scale up your production and find better ways to produce more money, since this video only really covers how to earn money from selling flour and wool, but there are other methods that you can go towards to get even more cash. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward it a little more just to allow this to finish building. Okay, power plant is built and I've done it. We've done it. Just gonna stop the energy production since I don't need no more energy. But this is full passive gasoline setup right here. As you can see, we're just constantly going up in gasoline even though we're selling wool. You would preferably want to scale up your wool production rate to make even more money. But goal was to get to full passive gasoline production, so we've done it. Really, you probably don't need all these wind turbines at this point, so you just get rid of anything you don't need. You only really need one fuel storage, so you really don't need that one. You really don't need this one, even though that one has gasoline still, but I'm just gonna go ahead and delete it. Just delete this. And probably keep that wind turbine for the time being. But all these other wind turbines, just go ahead and get rid of them, because you're just gonna need energy for other buildings, but when it comes to gas, you're gonna be good because you have all passive energy and passive water drop. So really that's everything. If you found this helpful, please do consider leaving a like and a comment on this video, letting me know, and it'll also help others find this video as well. I highly recommend subscribing if you haven't done so, as I will put out a lot more content and guides for Townstar and other games in the Guile Games ecosystem. If you want to figure out how to craft different items or what other items will sell for, check out a resource I made called the Townstar Playbook. You can find that in a link in the description of this video. It contains tons of information regarding Townstar, basically everything you need to know about everything in the game, really. There's also a link in the description of the video to join my Discord server, so feel free to join and say hello or ask any questions that you may have. I also have links to my Patreon and YouTube membership. If you want to support me and the channel and the resources I created to help others, definitely check those out. And if you do become a Patreon or YouTube member, It will mean so much to me and I greatly appreciate it. You will have your name in the outro of my video and other content that I create, as well as have early access to upcoming videos or possibly even behind the scenes content. That's everything for this guide. I appreciate all your support. Thank you for watching.